Hi, folks. It's Jessica Bockler here from the Aleph Trust, and we're gearing up for our big conference, Creative Bridges, in Oxford, here in the UK, later on this year in September. And we're exploring embodied consciousness, psyche, and soul in research and practice. And one of our keynotes is Cassandra Vieten, who is a clinical psychologist, a researcher, an author. She's also the director of research at the Arthur C. Clarke Center for Human Imagination at the University of California in San Diego. And Cassandra, welcome. So in your keynote, you're exploring imagination and its sort of central role in innovation, but also in movements for social change. And I think that's probably a curious jump for quite a few people. So I'm wondering whether you could say a little bit about that. How does imagination possibly lead to social change? What can it contribute?
Sure. Well, first of all, I cannot wait to be at the conference. I'm really looking forward to it. And yeah, I think imagination in a way is the missing link to some of our social movements, even though every social movement has been rooted in at least one person or a small group of people asking themselves, what if this could be different? I wonder how this could be different. I wonder how this could be better. And that wondering, that what if moment, you think about Dr. Martin Luther King saying, I have a dream, and how many people were ignited by that dream that at first was imagination. It was really imagining a new possibility and then inspiring others towards that new possibility. And it turns out that even though a lot of social movements or things that we want people to do, we try to motivate them through fear or threats, or if we don't do this, the planet's going to die, we're all going to die. Those things aren't as effective as inspiring people with a vision for an imagined new future and then moving towards that imagined new future.
Yeah, thank you for that. As I'm hearing you, I'm thinking of so many social movements or, activist movements that are doing exactly what you're describing there in terms of projecting forward the negative outcomes and then sort of opposing them, creating this sort of negative energy that doesn't seem to go anywhere, but just lead to further polarization. So there's something here, isn't there, around shifting the narrative and leading us more towards, this sort of more envisioned, can we call it a utopia? Is there a danger that it becomes um, too far-fetched or, just something that's in a distant dream? How can it be anchored in reality?
Yeah, I mean, I can see that in some ways people would be a little concerned about being too idealistic or, yeah, thinking of an unrealistic utopian future. But I would posit to everyone that in this day and age, we are much more at risk of not imagining big enough. That, when you really think about the problems that are facing humanity as a whole right now in terms of climate change or pollution or inequity of resources or, war, in many ways, those are all rooted in a lack of imagination, a lack of ability to think beyond into a new future. And so Arthur C. Clarke, who was the inspiration for the Arthur C. Clarke Center for Human Imagination, where I get to work, said something along the lines of, in order to find out what's possible, you have to go a little bit further into the impossible. And so I would say we're more at risk of editing ourselves too soon or constricting ourselves into known reality too soon before we imagine the biggest possibility. Because when we really imagine the biggest possibility, there are always nuggets of truth inside of that biggest possibility that can actually be manifest in this world. But if you don't go beyond it, it's really hard to push yourself far enough to go beyond your current conditioning or meaning systems that may be quite limited.
Thank you for that answer. And I'm curious, as I'm listening to you, what is the role of keeping the ego in check in that process? This is a conference that's foregrounding transpersonal and spiritual perspectives. So I'm curious how you relate that way of working with the imagination to keeping egoic fantasies in check here as we're working with the imagination.
Yeah, I think that that really happens through a number of practices. So I remember talking to someone who was very wise, who said, the kinds of practices that we engage in, let's say it's meditation or mind body, Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, whatever our practices are, dream work or journaling, that those practices are not actually there to open our eyes to new possibilities or to transform us. They are there to help us stay balanced as we open our eyes to new possibilities. They're there to, in a way, in your terms, keep the ego in check as we have symbolic understandings or synchronistic understandings or things like that. So I think without those kinds of balancing practices, and this is why they have been built into religions and spiritual traditions throughout millennia, is to make sure you stay with your feet on the ground while you're having these imaginings. And those two together are really the force. Imaginings by themselves can take us just into fantasy, which, you know, there's nothing wrong with fantasy. It's beautiful, it's fun, it's big, it's a spice of life. But it's not the ideal by itself for problem solving, but also that kind of logical, materialistic, mechanistic view is also limited in its ability to solve problems. So we really need to bring them together.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And just to round it off, what kinds of practices do you use day to day? What inspires your imagination?
I try to stay very open to the symbolic world at the same time that I'm staying in the quote real world. I don't like to use real because they really are both real in their own way. There's inner reality and then there's physical reality. But I do try to stay very open to symbols, synchronicities, um, things that I might read or see, or sometimes even I'll purposely search for a symbol using tarot cards or dream interpretation or active imagination, because there's a form of knowing that is not the mechanistic, material, physical, Newtonian physics way of knowing. It's a different way of knowing. And that way of knowing holds information that cannot be known in the ordinary way of knowing. And so when I was president of the Institute of Noetic Sciences, we called that noetic understanding, that deep knowledge. And so bringing noetic together with science or you know, reality, physical reality knowledge, again, is that handshake that kind of keeps us in the sweet spot. And so I will, you know, do dream analysis. I'll ask for a dream. I'll journal. I'll do active imagination with an imagined figure. I'll say, you know, okay, what would if I were to talk to Yoda about this, what would Yoda say? It sounds silly, right? But sometimes I have brought back answers that have changed my whole day or sometimes even my whole trajectory. And so I really encourage people to play with their active imagination, with their dreams, with symbols that they notice. If I see an unusual animal, I'll look up what does that animal mean, or what, you know, what do other people say that animal means, and kind of take it sort of seriously while also staying a serious scientist.
Yeah, I love the way you weave these different fields of practice and inquiry together. And I'm sensing that is exactly what is needed in today's world, where we still make the imagination something of a personal exploration or something that we engage with for leisure. And we take it less seriously when we think about science, research, education, and, you know, professional applications. It's
Yeah.
artists and filmmakers are kind of encouraged, you know, to be creative, but other professionals less so. So it's wonderful that you're weaving this together. And I really look forward to welcoming you as a
Me
keynote to
too. I
our
can't wait to be
conference.
there.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time.
You're
Brilliant.
so
Thank you.
welcome. See you there.
See you there.